Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the news editor for the Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. And before we start with this very important episode, we just want to ask you to drop a like, to share this video, to subscribe to our channel, to find us on other social media platforms, and to please check out our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle. Well, guys, today more than usual, so many things to discuss. Of course, the main topic of conversation, Israel's war against Iran, which was launched just hours after our last episode. I mean, if we had waited just a few hours to record, we probably would have, had our episode as this started to happen. But nevertheless, what has happened over the past 4 days? Well, back and forth attacks. Israel launches an overnight attack on Thursday, sabotaging Iranian air defenses and with the full support of the United States, kills multiple IRGC commanders, kills several nuclear scientists, hopes to achieve a quick victory by dismantling the Iranian military command. Nevertheless, Iran quickly turns around and punishes Israel. There's really no other way to describe what's been happening. For the first time in 20 months, we are seeing images of vast destruction that do not come from Gaza, that do not come from Beirut, from Damascus, from Sana'a, from Tehran. They come from Tel Aviv, from Haifa, from so many other places within Israel as Iran targets strategic targets. And, just over the past 24 hours, launched about 100 ballistic missiles targeting Tel Aviv, multiple sites hit, including the Ministry of Defense, the Kiryat, and a power station in Haifa with hypersonic missiles. In Ramat Gan, a 22-story building reportedly destroyed. They hit Bnei Brak, Petah Tikva, Pardes Katz, Nayot, Ayalon. In the Negev desert, they hit the Nebatim air base and other installations from which we don't have footage because of military censorship. In the Galilee, Israeli camps are targeted. Just a relentless attack. Not one would think not exactly what Israel was expecting when it launches this war, right? In the first few hours after this, the celebrations were going on in Israel, in the US. Donald Trump rushes to take credit for this attack, even though Marco Rubio just a few hours before said they had nothing to do, that this was Israeli unilateral action. Nevertheless, Donald Trump takes credit for it a few hours later. Now, not taking credit of too much, given the situation that Israel is suffering under, really. Um, Oh, there's so many things to talk about. As I said at the beginning, we'll get through all of them as much as we can. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about the past 4 days?
I think Karim should have the floor because, as we've seen for many, many months, Karim has been depressed as hell. And what accounts for his depression is not whether the side he favors is, is taking any actions, but whether he can see those actions or not. So if he can't see a video of it, never happened. But this weekend, Karim got his fill and came in here bouncing off walls. So go for it, Karim.
Yeah, so what we witnessed first, we have to clarify that what happened is Iran against the war. It's not only Israel. Iran is fighting back the whole world. They are fighting back against the United States, against Israel, against Jordan, against the US troops in Iraq, against Europe, Germany, Italy even sent their airplanes to counter the Iranian attacks, and many more. And of course, the strategic alliance between Greece and Israel was like very obvious because directly Israel sent all their airplanes and civilian even airplanes and the wing of Zion, which is the airplane of the prime ministers. It was sent to Cyprus and then to Greece. So what we witness is that, to be honest, I'm waiting for this moment even before I was born. Uh, so I think they made a huge mistake. Iran, we all saw Iranian missiles. They are one of the most advanced in the world. They are hypersonic missiles. Until now, we don't have like an idea that trajectory that Iran is taking, because it's very weird, because here in Lebanon we can see the missiles, and if you make a straight line from Iran, any point of Iran to Israel, usually the trajectory will not be over Lebanon, but that's what's happening. And yesterday we saw videos from Iraq, from Basra in Iraq, from southern Iraq, and we saw the missiles are being launched from South Iran, and then they are taking a weird trajectory, which is very, very hard to intercept. And then the missiles are going to space, as we can see now in this video. And then they are moving above Lebanon, and then they are hitting their targets. So I don't think Israel or the United States are prepared for this. And I don't know how many missiles, stockpile of advanced interceptors does Israel have. So we know that Ukraine till now they have interceptors, but I don't think Russians always use such advanced missiles. We saw Russians using such hypersonic missiles in a few incidents, but currently we're seeing that Iran is using such missiles in every attack. And as the Iranians said, hopefully it's true. They said that these are missiles from their old depot, old stockpiles of missiles, and till now they didn't use the new missiles. Hopefully they will use it. I don't want this to end without Iran using their new missiles. And we saw that destruction. Is the first time we see such destruction. This is the first time we see Israelis being buried under rubble, alive. They are tasting what they did to the region since.
For the first time,
Yeah,
for the
for the
first
first
time in
time.
almost 2
And the
years,
funny
the
part,
images of
yeah,
the images of civilians on the rubble matter, right? For the first time in almost 2 years, the images of people under the rubble finally matter.
They're
yeah, and
crying
cats,
like babies.
yeah, and Katz has the audacity to say that Iran is targeting civilian targets, and now we will launch an attack because of that. That's insane. That tells us how they are like separated from reality. They do think they are superior. It's like the Israeli regime is very dangerous for the whole world, not only for Muslims or for this world, because they will go after everybody who opposes them, even if he was in New Zealand or even in a remote island. If Israelis continue to like this, and if God forbids they win, they will go after every single person that opposes them, not only politicians, not only journalists, every person.
Indeed, indeed, Karim. Charmaine, please give us your thoughts.
So now Karim's racing so far ahead. Iran in his mind is undefeatable. It now has the upper hand. It's stronger than Yemen, therefore it'll beat the Israeli agenda this time, and all Israel's covert plans, which were not inconsiderable. I mean, it looks basically like Israel has set up factories in different parts of Iran, 3D printing drones. And we know about this because they took a picture. There's a picture online of this 3D printing machine. And it's what's extraordinary. I mean, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, is over the moon to have access to something like this. I mean, their process will be swifter if they reverse engineer it, which they will. But we have crazy video footage of an Iranian police vehicle chasing down and shooting at a truck, a small truck that looks to be carrying some of these drones across Iran.
One thing to note, Charmin, is that these suicide drones and these, manufacturing plants, it's a very similar strategy, almost actually the same strategy that Ukraine used in the recent attack against Russia. Remember, we had an episode about this in which the Ukrainians launched an attack from inside Russia using these drone launchers that are inside vehicles, inside trucks. This same strategy now completely transplanted to Tehran. And actually, there's reports that say for the past, I think between Friday and Sunday, there were no actual airstrikes in Iran. There were mainly suicide drone operations from within their country that are part of this network that is being dismantled.
Friday there were airstrikes, no?
Yeah, there were strike. Most of the explosions.
I mean, the Iranians say they took down a plane.
Yeah, most of the explosions that we saw on Friday, there were targets from within Iran. It was not most of them
So this F-35 thing is bullshit?
that they downed F-35. Yeah.
I think it was an F-16, and I think because it happened on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, the downing of this plane, like
Yeah, I
during
know,
the first
but
wave.
in this case, I still strongly only believe what my eyes sees. يعني we have to see the airplane
Okay,
because
Karim.
والله.
So the Iranian authorities have circulated a 3-digit number for Iranians to call in case they see any vehicles starting from tow trucks upward, in size, that could be transporting suspicious materials. So it looks like what happened in the last few days has primarily been munitions from inside Iran that the Israelis had set up with collaborators, likely Iranian collaborators. The Iranians are saying materials were smuggled over the Iraqi border, the Kurdish Iraqi border, into Iran, etc. The same typical groups that have um, participated in ethnic groups that have participated in sowing discord in Iran and are hugely infiltrated by the U.S. and Israel in Iraq, in Syria, elsewhere, right? So, as you were saying during while our lights were off, Esteban, this strategy, the drone strategy of hiding these drones within a country, we just saw a week or two prior with Russia, where supposedly the Ukrainians launched truckloads or lorry was it truckloads? They were big lorries, right? Truckloads of drones at Russian military sites and hit bombers, Russian bombers sitting in the
Dismantle air defenses, essentially, right?
yeah, correct. And the thing is, the Israelis have said they've been planning this for 8 months or something, and then Zelensky had said, with the Russian attacks, that he'd been planning it for a year and a half. They're the same planners. They're the same planners who did this in Russia and who are doing this in Iran. You know very well that the U.S. is involved in both. This whole
I'm
thing
shocked.
of of Trump not knowing, etc., because he boasted about the Iranian operation, kept quiet about the Russian one, right? It's so stupid. I almost think how stupid they are. They're showing their fingerprints all over. But just an aside, which we will not discuss much further in this, is that Zelensky is going insane because with what's happening now, he knows the eye is off of Ukraine and US firepower is going to be prioritized for Israel and not with Ukraine. He saw this at the beginning of the Gaza war. He saw it continue throughout the Gaza war. Nobody was more happy for Gaza ceasefire in January than Zelensky. And now he's back in the same position. But the most important thing about this is how the same fingerprints are all over the Israeli subversion inside Iran and the Ukrainian subversion inside Russia. The Russians point more than to the United States, they point to the United Kingdom, to London for running that operation, whereas the Iranians are saying this is an fully American backed operation. So, basically, same old, NATO perpetrators all around.
Well, they said that they provided Israel with 100 Hellfire missiles for the attack on Thursday, and now they're mobilizing troops. They're mobilizing the USS Nimitz and the USS Hotner to Mediterranean waters. And Israel, of course, is saying we cannot achieve our objective, which is to destroy Iran's nuclear program, without direct US intervention. And we've seen already that there's tanker planes being moved within the US to the East Coast to be deployed to Europe. So, all signs point to the U.S. entering this war sooner rather than later. Karim, you were saying.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's why often I say we have to act and not only react. Because, for instance, what happened is that there was an operation, undergoing operation, and clearly the Iranians didn't know about it against them by the Israelis. And we can say the first day was a successful operation. Uh, and I think it's a one-way operation because what the Israelis did at the first day, they can't replicate. Now all the eyes are on the roads in Tehran or across
They can't
Iran.
duplicate, but you don't know that there aren't other plans as well.
Yeah, we know, of course, there's more other plans, but the first shock that happened the first day, I don't think they can replicate
Yeah, I
it.
have to say one thing. The Iranians rallied super fast. I mean, the first Israeli strikes were at night, Friday night, and by the morning, there were, for those that Israel assassinated in its initial strikes, there were instant replacements across the board. So this was a very, I mean, for sure the Iranians were shocked. They haven't seen anything in 35, 36 years like this in Iran. The younger generation have never seen anything like this. And but I'm saying the shock was very quickly replaced by action, very kinetic action, not just in an instant strike back at Israel, but domestically also. The way the police forces and the security forces, Israel also assassinated the police chief in Iran, by the way, because the police forces have been on the ground identifying collaborators, arresting them, identifying secret facilities where drone production was taking place, etc. That's happened. That started happening within 24 hours. So the Iranians didn't miss a beat. And they're promising a lot more regarding what you were saying, the USS Nimitz. The USS Nimitz is moving from the South China Sea toward West Asia, is the news we have. But the Nimitz is due to be decommissioned next year after 50 years, of being deployed. And what's interesting about this is every idiot knows that in time of conflict, okay, in the Persian Gulf particularly, and 100% if the adversary is the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we know this because of every war game the U.S. Pentagon has gamed against Iran, always has Iran taking out U.S. aircraft carriers very easily. I mean, you've seen the missile power they have in Israel. The aircraft carrier is like a big fat sitting duck in waters just off the Iranian coast. Easy peasy to get them. So for aircraft carriers to be going in there is so weird. It either means that the Americans are not going to directly get involved with in this war, okay, because they're putting their stuff out in the open where Iran can hit it, or the Nimitz is meant to be, is going to be potentially hit by the Israelis or even the Americans, blamed on the Iranians as a pretext for the Americans joining the war directly against Iran. Um, yeah, USS Liberty people, survivors are screaming about this all morning. Okay, so what I want to say is just watch the USS Nimitz. It is truly either a sign that the US has no intention of entering the war directly, or that this is going to be a false flag thing. That ship is meant to be put in the ship graveyard in 2026. What's it doing going into a live conflict theater against Iran, knowing full well that Iran's first range of targets in any war with the Americans will be U.S. naval assets in the Persian Gulf and surrounding waterways?
I wanted to say that I always say that we should act, not react, because, for instance, what happened is that we're still reacting, which is a very good reaction. But if Iran, well, but for instance, if Iran started to attack or whatever, Israel wouldn't be able to act as they acted because Israel had the time. And as they said, if we want to believe them or not, they said 8 months, maybe less, maybe more. They took to make this operation. But if Iran and Hezbollah and other parts of the resistance acted before this, before the assassination of Sayyid Hassan, I think we would be in a better position.
Hindsight is always 2020. That's what I believe. Let me get your thoughts on something, guys. Over the weekend, there was this report that Donald Trump vetoed an alleged assassination plan against Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. And yesterday, Netanyahu, in this interview, I think it was with Fox News, he says Iran is planning to assassinate Donald Trump. Remember, this is what the Biden White House was saying during the campaign as well, that the assassination attempts against Donald Trump were being concocted by Iran and the IRGC. So this is not really very a new talking point, but it's being used again. And it makes me think of what you just said, Charmin, about a possible black flag to justify the entry of the U.S. Although, do they need justification?
It's so weird. The Israelis have violated every single international law on this, including hitting nuclear facilities, as we all observed when nuclear reactor in Ukraine was being hit. The whole world was in uproar about that. Of course, the Ukrainians tried to pin it on the Russians. The Russians were saying it's not us, because it is completely illegal to do that, because you don't know what's going to happen if you hit a nuclear power plant. Um, so the Israelis have been violating every single international law out there on laws that govern warfare, laws that prevent war, laws that moderate war, everything. Laws against assassination of foreign leaders. So Khamenei now, so far we've seen everybody, the head of the IRGC, the head of Iran's armed forces, down all the way to sort of the mid-level people being replaced instantly by the Iranian government. Khamenei would be a different matter altogether. Remember that Khamenei is a Shia Muslim cleric. He is Vilayat Faqih. He is the supreme leader of Iran. He is not just for Iranians, but for Shia around the world, their marja, which is the Shia get to choose who they'll follow. Like, Christians decide which church they'll go to because they like that priest. Shia get to decide which marja to follow because they like his thinking, they like his rulings on matters of religion and lifestyle, etc. And Khamenei is marja not just to Iranian Shia, who are the majority of the country. By the way, many Iranian Shia have Fadlallah as their marja, the Lebanese uh, cleric, and others have Sistani in Iraq as their marja, and Iraqis. Some Iraqis have Iran's Khamenei, and some Lebanese. There are marjas around the world. You can pick and choose. There are marjas within Iran that Iranians choose, and it's not Khamenei. So what I'm saying is, though, Khamenei is such a prominent, progressive marja that he is literally the spiritual leader for millions and millions of Shia around the world. What this will do, what the assassination of Khamenei will do um, in countries around the world, it would truly make it a global war in many different ways. And if Trump intervened, because Trump doesn't know the difference between marja and margarine, let's be honest. If Trump, sorry, you made me laugh. If Trump actually decided to tell Netanyahu that Khamenei was off bounds, that means someone's told him that. Is it an American or is it his good friend Vladimir Putin, during their phone call? Putin is due, as we know, to visit Iran very shortly, and Putin and Khamenei are equals. Khamenei is possibly Putin's only equal in the entire country, But after this, if Iran not only survives, but sets forth a new deterrence doctrine that Israel cannot violate, um, there will be many more officials in Iran. I mean, Iran will be catapulted into the sphere of a China and Russia, a serious global power. So there's so many things at stake right now. But I think, if y'all don't have anything urgent to say, I'd like to do some analysis. But if you want to respond to this, you guys go ahead. And
No, no. Hopefully, there will be like actual allies, as we see the alliance between the European countries and the Americans and Japan, for instance. Yani, for instance, I don't see like a real alliance between these three countries. Although we all hope we will see it.
but every war and every confrontation gels together these three countries like nothing else. I mean, because of Ukraine, Iran sold drones to Russia. Okay, provided, and then on to Sudan. And what I want to say is, and then China and Russia solidified their strategic relationship and their military and defense relationship. And what I want to say is the three countries have understood for some time now, because they're the most sanctioned and pursued adversaries by the United States. They've understood that they're kind of in the same boat. Now, I've argued on this podcast several times in the past that Trump needs a victory of some kind, either a Ukraine ceasefire, a Gaza ceasefire, an Iran nuclear deal, because he can't go at all three at the same time. But I've also argued that for him, in his dumb, American brain, where any brown country is a shithole country, that Iran has always been the lowest hanging fruit for him out of the three, three three Eurasian powers, China, Russia, and Iran. Um, if the Americans get directly involved in this war, the era of proxy wars will be over. Okay. Israel ultimately, as much as it has a great deal of power in Washington, Israel ultimately is a U.S. proxy. And Israel has been the battering ram against Iran, conveniently, when the U.S. wants to act like the big brother on the global stage. Dirty little Israel can do the dirty work. If the U.S. gets involved with this war, it will be a power battle, right?
I hope not.
No, I'm just saying, Iran, if for anyone, and I thought Kenny would be one of the first to do this, but he has been born again after some serious video footage this weekend. But I thought perhaps I would hear from Karim that they haven't done enough. The Iranians haven't done
Yeah,
enough. And I had
I
actually
want to
prepared
continue. Yeah.
this speech about how Iran is pacing itself because Iran considers Israel a U.S. proxy. Now, many people would not. Many Americans would argue that Israel's the one that calls the shot in this relationship. But the resistance axis leadership, from Khamenei to Hassan Nasrallah and elsewhere, have consistently repeated the refrain that it is the U.S. that controls Israel. Okay, that Israel is the American proxy. The reason Iran is doing, what did they do yesterday? At one point, they just did 20 missiles, right? In one big salvo. The reason they're pacing themselves is because they're anticipating and prepping for a greater war. It may come, it may not, but Iran's sights are set on the U.S., and it is the U.S.'s decision on whether or not to get involved in a war with Iran, all right? But Iran has other options during this period. Uh, First of all, in its first salvo, Iran shot a lot more missiles. In its second salvo, which did far more damage, Iran used lesser missiles. The Iranians are promising missiles that we haven't yet seen, okay, which I think is much further down the road, because you need the surprises for it, to be your ace up your sleeve, right? You wouldn't expend them now when all Iran has to do is it can use its lowest grade missiles to, as we've said at the Cradle before, pretty much destroy Israel. Israel only has X amount of um, power plants. It only has X amount of desalination plants. It only has 3 gas platforms. It only has X amount of airstrips. Basically, so let me just say, so Iran did a lot more missiles on the first day, much fewer the second day, but now Israelis are crying and screaming because Iran actually hit Israeli power structure, and many Israelis went off the power grid for a while, and there were announcements on Israeli Telegram about how they're working to get the power back online, etc. But the
They caused
reason
blackouts in Haifa.
Right. The reason they did this, and even like the moderate Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said over the weekend, he said, look, on the first night we targeted only military sites because the Israelis by and large went for Iran's military brass. Okay. However, he says, quote, after the Israeli regime attacked economic targets yesterday, including the Tehran refinery, We responded by striking Israeli economic sites and oil refineries. They needed fewer missiles for that. Right now, I'm telling you, we argued this before. 20 missiles could make could throw Israel into a blackout with no water turning from its taps, okay, and no airstrips from which to fly planes, and no air defenses. But Iran's pacing itself. Geographically, Iran is so much bigger than Israel. It has geographic depth that allows it to absorb wave after wave after wave. Okay. Israel is maybe attacking like the western coast right now, but Iran has a lot of its military assets in the east and the center. There's so much depth that allows Iran to absorb these hits. There's virtually zero depth for Israel, zero depth. So this is significant. But here's where Iran can play a little bit, okay? Because the Israelis took some very, very big hits over the course of yesterday, right? The last 24 hours. Iran can use its every missile to send important messages to Western powers, particularly the Americans, okay? The Americans are watching very carefully what's happening on the ground in Iran. In Israel. Israel's panicking. All these American flights are flying all over the place. Aircraft carriers are coming. Are they going to do anything? The Iranians are signaling that if you send, more defensive or offensive weapons to Israel, starting now, we can do many things that are not even military. We will close the Strait of Hormuz. These are words being uttered by top Iranian officials with clout. Closing the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, if you're going to affect our economy, we're going to affect yours, right? So non-military thing. You close the Straits of Hormuz. Launch even one strike directly yourself. The Iranians can signal to the Americans, and we'll bomb your base in X country. A Persian Gulf country, a country in West Asia where the U.S. has military bases. Keep coming with further bombs, missiles, aircrafts, or drones being launched, all three, right? We'll bomb all your bases in the region. Of course, you know that Trump is taking phone calls from Persian Gulf monarchies, from the leaders of these countries, even from the King of Jordan and elsewhere, saying, please don't do this, our oil supply, or this, or that. He's starting to feel the pressure. He thought Israel could do like a fabulous hit, take out all Iranian military commanders, that like they did with Hezbollah, right? Decapitate Iran and hit some nuclear facilities. It's not about the nuclear thing, right? It's never been about the nuclear thing. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon and doesn't want one. But now Iran's doctrine can change. And that's another level of messaging that Iran is now signaling to Western powers, particularly to the United States. Close the Strait of Hormuz. They are now saying, and I think there's a vote coming up in the Iranian
Let me
parliament.
jump in, Charmaine, because this is what I wanted to mention. That this morning, the Iranian parliament announces that they're drafting a bill to formally exit the non-proliferation treaty, and we've already heard reports and even some comments from officials talking about them no longer cooperating with the IAEA and not informing them about changes inside the nuclear
Correct.
facilities. Iran is starting to make their own choice.
Which means no Western eyes, no Israeli eyes on Iran's nuclear program moving forward. Iran has participated in IAEA oversight for 20 odd years, and now they'll turn off their cameras inside Iran's nuclear facilities. And if Iran decides to pursue a nuclear weapon, nobody will know about it. So Trump has gone from scuttling the JCPOA, the nuclear deal that was struck in 2015, to then urging the Iranians to do another nuclear deal, to actually getting Iranians to walk away from any oversight. Like, well done, Donald Trump. But here's the other thing. I don't know, and I don't think any of us know, but Iran will have a very clear political aim, and a very clear military strategic aim for whatever they do moving forward. Okay. We don't know what they are, but let's, you know, take a whack at it. I mean, for me, the Iranians typically don't aim for the like ridiculous heights the way the Americans do. Like Iran will have no enrichment whatsoever. They aim for attainable goals. Political goal, one political goal is to make sure to trade out Netanyahu for a ceasefire. And I say this because there are many major things that Iran can achieve by trading out Netanyahu. First of all, Netanyahu has been the glue that has kept Israel bombing all fronts for the last 19, 20 months. Okay. I don't think there's any other Israeli political leader who could do this. Netanyahu's a madman. Netanyahu is kind of like a political animal. He's got lawsuits coming at him for corruption, for extortion, for this, for that, for colluding with enemies, for paying enemies, for, countless things. And yeah, and he's still clinging to power. If you trade in Netanyahu, first of all, you get rid of the guy who launched all these wars against Lebanon, against Gaza, against Yemen, against Iran, occupying Syria and Lebanon right now. And importantly, you signal to any future Israeli leadership that you strike Iran even once and we'll get rid of you. It's a big threat. These guys are egotistical. Israeli politics is now about hardcore politics. It's not about what's good for the state anymore. These are people vying for power and money. So I think that's a really, really attainable political objective because a lot of Western leaders are also tired of Netanyahu. He keeps embroiling them in quagmires. The other thing is, it would set a fantastic example for the Russians. The Russians may even argue for this, as much as people like to pretend that Putin and Netanyahu are good friends, because to get rid of Netanyahu mid-war, which would allow for a Gaza and an Iran ceasefire deal to be rammed through by the Americans, would set a very important precedent of removing Zelensky mid-war, right? With a deal forced through by the Americans, and Putin would be very happy. So this I think is an achievable political aim with great upsides, not just for Iran, but actually for the West. The West can distance themselves from anything that's just happened. Trump could say, no, Netanyahu did it. It wasn't the Israelis. Israel, we can remarket Israel as a better place without Netanyahu. So I do think that's really important. There is a military strategic objective that Iran has to reach in this conflict. Otherwise, Iran will have lost. And that is to have established absolute deterrence, to have deterred Israel from ever doing what it's doing now in Yemen, in Gaza, in Syria, in Lebanon. Israel feels very free in those four places to launch strikes and military attacks at any time, whenever they wish. It cannot have that freedom in Iran. If it does have that freedom in Iran, then Iran has not achieved its military or strategic objective, which would be absolute deterrence. So I don't think Iran is aiming as high as, eliminating Israel altogether, but I do believe it will do whatever it takes to achieve whatever its unknown political objective and military strategic objectives are.
So let me get your thoughts on something else, guys. Let's move on to the international reactions. What did the world say? Well, China, Russia, as you said, Charmaine, they threw their support behind Iran. They called this a non-provoked war. They condemned it. Pakistan was very interesting. The defense minister threw Pakistan's complete support behind Iran. The Europeans blame Iran for getting attacked. They talk about Israel's right to self-defense in an unprovoked attack that has killed up to this point around 200 Iranians, including dozens upon dozens of civilians, many of them women. and children. So that's one thing, right? The complete lack of the complete hypocrisy of the West, right? We know the West is a hypocritical entity, but now it's really, reaching just absurd levels of, like a reality seems almost like a parody. The other thing I want to get your guys' thoughts on is this war is launched just as Donald Trump throws himself a military parade for his birthday, and I'm sure we can put some of the images from this military parade on Saturday. My God, the leader of the free world, the country that is going to bring freedom and democracy to the entire world, their soldiers cannot even march in lockstep. What an embarrassing display this was on Saturday. At the same time as the skies of Israel are getting lit up like Christmas trees by these missiles and the Iron Dome and the THAAD systems and the Jordanian air defenses and the US air defenses, etc., cannot contain the ferocity of the Iranian attacks. We see the greatest military in the world put on a show. I've seen better displays of power at a kindergarten parade than what we saw on Saturday. Truly embarrassing. We need to mention this as well. I'm sure the viewers will appreciate it. What do you guys think this is the message that is being sent currently? We know that the United States is going to enter, right? I think there's no doubt about that. This is the country that is going to fight a war against Iran and then against Russia and then against China as well.
To be honest, usually it's the first time for the Americans to do that. They are not prepared for that. They don't have like a brigade for display. So, but we can all agree that they have one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful military
I
in
think
the
someone
world
at
by
the
far.
Pentagon wanted to embarrass Trump, to be honest, because they can put on big extravaganzas in the US. They have,
No, they do. They do. Like, have you never seen like the Super Bowl or like like any football game?
yeah, somebody wanted to embarrass Trump.
So I just wanted to comment on some stuff. First, I don't think it's good for Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz. This will not benefit Iran and will not even affect Israel or the United States.
I think it will I'll tell you how it will benefit Iran. It will show everybody that if you try to impact Iran's energy supply and its refineries and its production platforms, etc., that nobody will be able to produce oil or gas. The Iranians have said this before very clearly. If we can't produce, you can't produce. And that will get everybody in 1 hour on the phones to undo it. It's a very, very strong card Iran has. I'm not talking about forever.
Yeah, so I am against Iran closing the Hormuz Strait because it doesn't. I don't think it benefit Iran, and it will create more enemies.
Wouldn't it also create some damage for China if they should
Yeah, of
shut down
course,
the
for
Strait of
China, for
Hormuz?
Saudi Arabia, I don't think they want now Saudi Arabia as an enemy, and I hope that Iran will not target any Americans during this war because Iran should only now be in war against Israel. This is the target. Israel is the target. They said that all the American facilities and the American infrastructure will be hit during this war, an official statement. So I am also against that. And I hope only for two things. So I believe Iran should move all their like sensitive missiles or moving facilities to the east towards Pakistan because I think Pakistan is willing to aid Iran in this. They have a powerful radars, and I don't think Israel will also hit Pakistan. So they will be safe there because we all saw that the air defense of Iran is not as good as we all thought. It was like somehow destroyed the first day. Now they have more capabilities, but we didn't see any any airplane that got hit by Iran or even the tankers that they fly. They are very easy targets, and Iran was not didn't manage to hit them. So they need air protection. And I only hope one thing from the Russians, that they are providing satellite imagery for Iranians. I think that's all what Iran needs.
Do you guys think that Iran should trust the Pakistani government?
I think so, yeah. Because, for instance, just this one, because, for instance, Netanyahu said it more than once that when we're done with Iran, Pakistan is next, and by that, all the terrorism on the world will be over.
First of all, many of Iran's stuff is already in the east and center of Iran. As I said earlier on the show, they're not going to move massive things now during they've anticipated an Israeli
They
attack.
should.
They don't. You're not okay. I'm saying Iran's anticipated and planned for this for a long time. They already have their things out of the normal pathway of Israel.
But what happened the past 2 days says the opposite, Sharmeen.
No, what are you saying? They took out all of Iran's missiles. Now they should move them elsewhere. They've already got that. That's all I'm saying. So information from Iran is this, okay? They've already got them in different places, east, center, elsewhere throughout Iran. Secondly, this idea that Israel's not going to hit Pakistan. Just FYI, we have an article hopefully coming out later this week, though it depends on what happens because things are moving so quickly now. We're axing things, from one day to the next. Netanyahu back in 2011 talked about, in an interview, the biggest problem facing Israel's next generation is, he said, it's a strategy. He's developing strategy to prevent Islamic regimes from gaining nuclear weapons or having access to them. And he says, quote, "The first is called Iran and the second is called Pakistan. If these radical regimes obtain nuclear weapons, they will disregard the rules that have been in place for nearly 7 decades."
Mission that we have is to prevent a militant Islamic regime from meeting up with nuclear weapons or from nuclear weapons meeting up with a militant Islamic regime. The first is called Iran, the second is called Pakistan, because if these radical regimes have nuclear weapons, they will not obey the rules that have been obeyed in the last almost 7 decades.
What a farce, right?
What
Netanyahu
rules?
saying this. Exactly. And they can threaten our world. Therefore, the first priority is to prevent these regimes from acquiring nuclear weapons. And the second is to find a substitute for oil. Okay, now he says Iran, number one, Pakistan, number two, which accounts for Pakistan's very unusual, and unexpected reaction of after Israel struck Iran on Friday. I mean, they basically, they're believed to have provided material assistance to Iran now. All right. There's all kinds of denials happening, but our sources there are saying, no, this is happening. They're taking this very, very seriously. That the Pakistanis view that, a strike on Iran will open the door for Pakistan to do the same. Sorry, for Israel to do the same to Pakistan, because, really, what allies does Pakistan have anymore? And Israel is getting more and more in bed with India. All right. And, it's sort of like the US, India, Israel, Europe, etc., against China, Russia, Iran. So, of course, sort of taking a hard hit at Pakistan also weakens China's big South Asian partner, a bordering state to China. So vulnerability there, and also China's big BRI hub, which is through Pakistan. So this is made, actually, the Pakistani Army's chief of staff is just been summoned to Washington to be told off. The Americans are very concerned about Pakistan's moves in the last few days and statements. The Pakistanis are backtracking, but behind the scenes, we're being told that they're taking this very, very seriously. And you might have, Pakistan, which is never typically sided with Iran, suddenly be pulled fully into the Russia-China-Iran orbit.
One thing I want to discuss with you guys before we wrap up for this week, there was also this report, I think it was on Saturday, about this hacker, right? Who hacks U.S. warfare systems to return control of air defenses and other systems to the IRGC. So U.S. uses their technological prowess to remove, right, to block the IRGC from their controls. And then this hacker, calling himself or themselves Mr. Soul, hacks the jamming systems, and immediately the US State Department puts a bounty on their head, like a $10 million bounty, demanding, and it's the same, what you're talking about, saying, Pakistan, the officials are being called to Washington to be told off. How dare you, stand up for a country that is your ally? Now you have bounties put on hackers' heads for returning control of the warfare systems to the nation, that is theirs. So this is just part of of how this war has taken shape, right? It's no longer just about the bombs. It's also about the narrative. It's also about the technological warfare and all of this. I just found it to be such an interesting story that is still to be completely verified, given the nature of it, but it's been reported pretty widely.
I mean, I think the whole, I just right on Friday we discussed the big cache of leaks that Iran had announced, tens of thousands of documents, video files, etc., from every major Israeli strategic, military, finance, intelligence body, um, you know, material that showed Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, bugging the homes, the bathrooms, the communications of his opposition, blackmail, material that would be used against them, etc. And what we surmised was that the pictures of, the sexy pictures of Ehud Barak from that were released by an Iranian hacking group in 2023 were probably indications that this operation has been going on for years. Okay. Uh, and now the Iranians probably announced it because the Israelis caught on, right? But the amount of documentation the Iranians have gathered over this time must be substantial. So, we talk about Israeli tech, U.S. tech being like incomparable to anything that the other side has. Well, the other side has invested a lot in low cost tools that give them a chance at full spectrum dominance, right? If you don't have the military hardware to match your adversary, you might be able to shut down their systems through these kind of cheaper tools, right? And a senior Iranian security official told RT exclusively on Sunday that, quote, Tehran is gearing up to decisively counter Israel's military operations. So this is the third day of war between the two countries, and this is the night, this is the day that Iran, with minimal missiles, hit Israel very hard. That Iran, he says, intends to shut down the Israeli regime's war machine. He also tells the Russian media outlet that Iran has been preparing for a long war. Now, they don't necessarily mean a long war with Israel, because I think Israel's easy, because very clearly we've just seen the last few days that no Western, no Israeli air defense system can stop incoming Iranian hypersonic missiles, and Iran obviously hasn't used its more advanced missiles yet, right? And it's using less and hitting more.
Yeah, and it's using a lot of its older ballistics, like they did in True Promise 1 and 2, which is to overwhelm the joint defenses of Israel and its partners in order to allow the hypersonics to hit. And my God, the way they hit these missiles.
Correct. And, this senior security official, Iranian security official, was telling RT that Iran has an extensive list of potential targets within the occupied territories. He means Israel, which include covert residences of Israeli government leaders. They hit Netanyahu's house this weekend, right? His
I am
residence.
against that, but yeah.
It doesn't matter. They're going to do in kind, so nobody can ever accuse Iran of disproportionate use of disproportionate force, and Iran can also frighten the Israelis, who will then understand that Iran has a much broader, deeper, wider target bank than they ever anticipated, because all they've ever seen from Iran is hitting a few airstrips, correct? In the past, hold on. So Iran said, the officials said that the covert residences of Israeli government leaders are included in the expanded target banks, energy facilities, factories supplying military aircraft, critical command and control infrastructure. We already saw some of these being hit on Sunday. I mean, what's more? What more will come now?
That some of the attacks even hit the Dimona nuclear facility, one of Israel's nuclear facilities, and that also, well, the Kiryat, the Israeli Defense Ministry, which is in the middle of a populated center, as well as their air defenses, right? So, who uses human shields again? Please remind
So
me.
you're saying that Israel use human shields?
Exactly. Who uses human shields, right? The actor that is using human shields?
More so, Netanyahu or the Israelis have now banned airlines from flying Israelis out of
Yeah, even when
Israel.
the evacuation planes
Yeah, they want
begin.
human shields there so that the Iranians will feel bad. But Iranians are only doing in-kind operations, and let's be honest, 224 Iranian nationals have been killed in 3 days by the Israelis. A lot of them, I think between 70 and 80 of them, women and children. So a huge number of the victims, clearly civilians already. How many Israeli civilians have died? 14?
A couple dozen, maybe.
I mean, today I saw 14. Is
Yeah,
that not?
14, and they said that there's still some people under the rubble.
Yeah, but I want to say that a military expert told CNN now, and they didn't say if it was an Israeli or a U.S. military expert, that the latest missile batch from Iran was extremely precise in its targeting and different from those Iran used previously. So he is referring to like the missiles we saw on Sunday as opposed to those from Saturday morning onward throughout the day, right? Because we've made clear that Iran used much fewer missiles on day 3 than it did on, day 1. But hit harder targets. So he says the military expert tells CNN Iranian missiles they are seeing are capable of maneuvering, which complicated air defense systems attempts to intercept them. I mean, these Iranian missiles, and these are the ones they've seen, so we know these are still their early missiles, right? They're not the most advanced stuff they have. They can just zigzag past. They don't take straight routes, right? They're not like ballistic missiles,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If they were launched from south of Iran and flew over Lebanon,
Yeah.
yeah, they took a very, very weird trajectory.
They took a weird trajectory. So many people have taken videos in Lebanon from, I think, Saturday night. I've seen a few from
Oh
people
my
I know
God, the
personally
saxophone player,
of
the
of
saxophone
of
player,
missiles heading over Lebanon. They looked close, but clearly they were. These missiles are going down unknown
uncharted path.
paths, unknown trajectories, at least probably trajectories that have not been simulated in war games by the Americans and Israelis.
Which makes the interceptors very difficult for the interceptors.
No, first of all, almost impossible to intercept hypersonic missiles, A. But B, like, you know how much it costs to.
Guys, how much do you think it has cost U.S. taxpayers so far in Iron Dome interceptors and THAAD interceptors just over the past 4 days? Just how much money
Almost,
has gone down
who
the drain?
cares? They'll just keep raising the debt ceiling in America and pretend that everything's hunky-dory until it all comes crashing down. I mean, but also when you ask about U.S. taxpayers, we're seeing this since Israel starts its strikes on Iran, like American social media has gone insane. You have like Marjorie Green, whatever, like sounding like she's pro-Iran and anti-Israel. Literally, Trump
The
made
MAGA
the
people are
biggest
not happy.
mistake ever by, if he helped Israel initiate this or gave them the green light by doing that, number one, by not anticipating, not being educated, knowledgeable enough about what the potential scenarios were, and by then stupidly thumping his chest after uh, Israel's provocative first assault on Iran, its assassinations of nuclear scientists and top Iranian military leaders. He literally tried to take credit for some of this. So a major miscalculation for Trump. We don't know what's going to happen down the road, but each side has plenty of possibilities. One side has never demonstrated its full military capabilities ever. We've never seen Iran's full potential. And we saw great readiness by the Iranians on Friday night. We saw great readiness by them, and that surprised me. I think
Usually, I think that strategic patience that Iran was taking, it was like a big strategic mistake. And we lost Said Hassan and Syria out of it. Now Iran is acting. And also, when you mentioned hacking and this stuff, I just wanted to say that we should not play their game. For everything they do by intelligence, Iran should retaliate with firepower because that's what Iran is good in. And when I saw the trajectory of the missiles, I think Iran can hit whenever, whatever it wants.
Karim, you know that Iran has remote controlled major U.S. drones down from the skies to the embarrassment of the U.S. military, and this is years ago.
I mean, Yemen down
Think
24
that they
Reaper
have
drones.
the other side has full technological superiority.
They do, Sharmin.
No, hold on.
It's a mistake not to think like this.
No, in many things, okay, we know that the Americans largely rely in.
Okay, so I was saying now we can see that Iran can hit whenever, wherever it wants, and the trajectory that the missiles are taking is very difficult for the West to intercept, especially because what we saw that the missiles that were intercepted moments before hitting the ground. That means that the Western airplanes and air defenses failed to intercept the missiles while they were in space. So the trajectory that Iran is going for is very complicated, because usually how the air defenses work is that they calculate where the missile will hit. Yani the moment the missile re-enters to Earth or to the atmosphere of the Earth, the computer calculates where the missile will hit, and the interceptors or the airplanes go to intercept it. But what's happening now is that during their re-entry phase, the missile is maneuvering, and we're only seeing Israelis targeting or downing missiles just seconds before it reached the ground.
So that's an acknowledgement that they do not have the technological prowess you would expect.
To intercept the
nobody
missiles,
has
you
this
mean?
this technology. Even the Americans, they said it. They don't have this technology. Yeah.
Okay, they don't. So it's a big hole in technology.
No, it's not a big hole in technology, Sharmin. This is a big hole in mechanical engineering. It's not technology. Technology. When I say technology, I'm talking about missiles hacking. About hacking. Internet technology, computer technology, mobile phones. The United States is
So you're just
superior
going on
than
base
this.
what you've seen from the Americans and Israelis, their capabilities. All I'm saying, Karim, is you have not seen, neither have I, Iran's capabilities. However, we have hints at these things because the things that have been made public indicate a number of things. I mean, just some examples of Iran being able to infiltrate potentially for years, okay, have complete access for years to Israel's most secure facilities. The ability of Iran to remote control, to intercept and take control and command of sophisticated U.S. drones. This was seen years ago, okay? The ability that I remember an attack in Jerusalem. So, like a Palestinian did a major attack in Jerusalem, killed some settlers, and got away. They couldn't find this guy because the Israelis panicked, and this leaked into small Israeli media that all the surrounding CCTV and surveillance devices suddenly blanked out. Like this was a protected operation, and they thought it was an Iranian interception, and it was an Iranian test exercise. So we do not know what capabilities the Iranians have. Don't forget, when you say this country is technologically superior, we saw them do things in AI, for instance, and be able to compress the amount of intelligence gathering they do, which is listening to everything and watching everyone, and to compress it into usable data. They're ahead of everyone, okay? But when you say they're ahead of us technologically generally, that can't be true. There's only so many human hours. Hold on. And and countries and defense establishments decide to invest in certain things that they believe will be beneficial according to what they view would be full spectrum dominance, or achieving that in um, peer a peer conflict or near peer conflict, or a conflict in which the adversary can cause some harm. It's not the case. They don't invest in everything. Whereas Iran, a country with minimal resources, somewhat isolated in terms of being able to receive the most, the top technology around the world, they're prevented from receiving that, has decided to invest in certain things. As you saw in Iran, Iran has become a world leader in nanotechnology because it came in at the onset and it decided to make that its strong point. And in natural gas vehicles, it's ahead of the US. So I'm saying you can't just say one is technologically superior. We know that the Iranians are heavily invested in science and technology and R&D. We just don't know what what technologies they selected for military application that they think them will give an advantage to Iran over a much sort of more powerful adversary.
Hopefully, Sharmeen, but again, just to comment in few sentences, I think it's wrong to invest or waste time and money on technology, and your enemy is superior. You have to invest in other stuff like they did in missiles, which I respect. The decision that they took to not invest or put money of buying like airplanes, jet fighters, because they know they can't face the Americans and Israeli jets in the air. They went to the missiles. That's all what I am saying.
So for me, this is like a boy argument. Shoot everything. Shoot, just shoot.
Of course.
Yeah. Whereas a multifaceted woman who can put on lipstick, be on the phone, and check the rear view mirror and drive at the same time, will just suggest, humbly, that Iran is more Sun Tzu than yeehaw. Okay, and so it will be genuinely full spectrum. They will look for technological advances. They will look for opportunities through negotiation, through diplomacy. They will conduct direct warfare and use firepower and be on the escalation ladder and go up depending on what's necessary that can't be achieved in other means. With other means, it's the way the new rising powers of the multipolar world operate. So for sure, Iran will not operate just through firepower. There are many other ways to win wars, as we saw through Sun Tzu. The Americans don't know this because they go for the sledgehammer machine gun approach to everything. I'd like to think that the Persians are much more sophisticated.
I'm not saying they are stupid, Sharmeen, but it's a lost world in technology. That's it.
We shall see.
Tell us in the comments. Do you agree with me or with Sharmeen?
Exactly. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Well, we would be remiss if we do not mention that this entire war is happening in part to cover up the massacres that are continuing to happen in the Gaza Strip, where hundreds upon hundreds are being killed every single day. In the north of Gaza, a total internet blackout, complete demolitions of any building left standing, just a complete ethnic cleansing. And in the south, well, the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, continues to serve as a death trap where, again, Palestinians are just being gunned down every day. We need to mention this. In this episode, unfortunately, we've already gone very long. We cannot speak in depth about this. But as I said, this is something that is still happening. The war in Iran has kind of shifted, right, the global perspective from what's happening in Gaza, from the Holocaust to this war. At the same time, you have Egypt and Libya blocking the convoys that were heading, trying to break the siege. All of these are important stories, and all of these are things we will continue to discuss as we move forward in the future episodes. But for today, we want to thank you all for joining us and to remind you to please leave a like, to share, to subscribe to our channel, and to find our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle, help us continue to do the work that we do here. For the Cradle News Roundup, my name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami and Sharmeen Narwan.